Hi, I'm Rick Reynolds, founder and president of Affair Recovery. And today I want to talk about the language of change in part 2 of our series on ambivalence. But I want to start by just reminding you that ambivalence isn't something that's really bad, even though it can be troubling. It's actually our first step on the road to change. Because before we're ambivalent, we're actually blind to the need for a change. In fact, a lot of times it's not until something happens that brings about the winds of a need for change, such as a doctor telling you you're going to have a heart attack if you don't change your lifestyle, or being confronted with an issue that you've always thought was okay, such as pornography, or maybe having an affair, or whatever, as we speak here at Affair Recovery. Considering that change and dealing with what life has thrown at you can certainly be uncomfortable. Just imagine, and this is the problem with ambivalence, desperately wanting something you know is going to have regrettable consequences, because that's what ambivalence is about. It's about two things that are really important to you that are diametrically opposed, and you can only have one. And with ambivalence, the more you move toward one choice, the clearer the disadvantages of that choice become, and the more the opposite seems to appeal. However, one way out of ambivalence is for the person who's ambivalent, if they can at least begin to use the language of pro-change, beginning to continually talk about those arguments, but they'll always feel the opposite at the same time. Paul Amrin is a psychologist specializing in the language of motivation and commitment. And he studied how people ask for and commit to certain languages. So suppose you ask your mate to call and set up a counseling appointment. We've learned to listen to how they respond to determine what the likelihood is of it occurring. So consider these replies. I don't have time. I'll try to get to it. I might be able to later today. I promise I'll do it by supper. Those particular answers move from low to high likelihood of this even occurring. I mean, for instance, if someone says, I'll try, what are the odds of them actually doing it? Amrin noticed that interactions also don't go well when the request language, asking someone to do something, is at a level of demand higher than the other person's willingness. When it comes to talking to someone who's ambivalent, his suggestion was try to meet that other person at their current level of motivation, and not to get ahead of their readiness for change. So listen for your mate's readiness to change if you're dealing with things in the marriage, or maybe with your teenagers. So there are 4 types of what are called preparatory change talk. These aren't saying that things will occur, but begin to listen to the language of how people talk to you when you ask them for things, or as you listen to your own language. The first type of change, or preparatory change talk, is about desire. You see, wanting is one component of motivation. Maybe not the most critical, but for instance, if I say, I want to lose weight, okay, I've got some desire to lose weight, but it doesn't mean I'll do anything. I'd like a better relationship. I want us to be happy. I wish I didn't get so angry. Obviously, that person's showing motivation, but they're not at a place where something is going to happen. The second preparatory type of talk is ability. People aren't going to build up much motivation for change if they believe it's impossible for them. I'd like to go to counseling, which would be desire, right? I'd like to do that, but I don't think we could really change. In other words, I don't believe we even have the ability to change. So where's that person's motivation going to be? Ability language can also come in the form of, I could go to counseling, but I don't want to. So a lack of commitment. So there's still no ability, no commitment in that. Amrin said the third type of statement is reasons for change. In talking about reasons to go to counseling, someone might say something like, I might learn how to control my anger, and that would be good, or it would probably help our communication, or I'd like to make our sex life better, or, maybe we could figure out how to get along. That gives reasons, but as you listen, it's still not motivation to change. Stating reasons doesn't imply desire, it just says why it might be good. Now, the fourth component of preparatory conversations is really need. This reflects why change is important or there's an urgency for change. Like, I really need to lose weight. I have to make a decision, or I really need to stop drinking because it's affecting my health. Again, that person is acknowledging the need for change, but be careful, because preparatory language, even when it's about need, doesn't mean they're ready to change. While the component of need talks about an imperative need, it doesn't imply a desire or an ability to change. I have to isn't the same as I'm going to. Saying we need to go to counseling isn't the same as I'm going to go to counseling. Saying I want a better marriage isn't the same as saying I'm going to do whatever it takes to get out of this situation, to improve our marriage, to change me. Preparatory change talk is a move forward. And I think that's where most of us start when we begin considering a movement towards something better. It's commitment language that actually signals that movement forward is going to happen, that movement toward change will occur. Saying one must, can, wants to, or has a good reason for change isn't the same as saying someone will. Commitment language signals a likelihood for change. It's the language of contracts, promises, marriage vows. Imagine being sworn into court to testify. And they say, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? And you answer with, well, I really want to tell the truth. I could. I have good reason to. I know I need to. That's not a commitment, right? Just short of commitment language is one other type of language that Amren talks about, which is activation language. I'm ready to, I'm willing to, I'm prepared to. But that implies commitment without actually stating the commitment. It's almost there. And maybe you've heard your kids, or maybe you've said that as you look at exercise, or maybe even about addressing issues in your marriage. I'm really ready to do something. And when I hear an answer like that, then my next question is always like, okay, so what are you prepared to do? What's next? So if you are living with someone that's struggling with ambivalence, just remember pushing them for change will most likely result in no change. Because inside of them, because of that homeostasis of, being stuck, there's a part of them that is immediately going to want to come back and say, almost like, make me. So try not to place demands on a person who's really ambivalent beyond their readiness for the change. Listen to that preparatory talk. In fact, encourage that preparatory talk. What we can do, what we can dream of, what might be possible, where could we go? And as long as we can continue in that preparatory talk, they'll slowly begin to move forward, hopefully toward change. But it takes time, and it's a back and forth process, because without a third party slowly helping them talk about goals and reasons and things like that, they'll continue in that loop of circling back. If you're the ambivalent one, you might consider taking a different approach rather than just trying to decide, the conflict between two different warring motivations. Try to take a different perspective. You might look at your values. Ask yourself, what do I care about most in life? What matters most to me? Answer that question. How do I hope life will be different in a few years? from now? What are the rules that, if I think about it, that I've lived by? What am I trying to live up to? Suppose I ask you to describe the goals that have guided your life, the values you've tried to live by. What would you say are your 5 most important values? Maybe just one word for each. What would those be? If you were to write a mission statement for your life describing your goals or purpose in life, what would you write? If you were to ask your closest friends to tell me what you live for, what matters to you most, what do you think they would say? And at times, just looking at our values and our goals in life reminds us of what's really important to us. And even though we may be stuck on the horns of the dilemma that's ambivalence, remembering those things begins to give us those desires and that need and that want, and begins to activate us toward that commitment, and oftentimes helps us move to where we're living with integrity and consistency with who we truly are. The answers to those questions won't immediately snap you out of ambivalence, but they certainly may serve as reminders and additional motivation as you try to resolve this endless loop that you're caught in. A final suggestion would be find a therapist who specializes in motivational interviewing. Often this will be somebody who might be an addictions therapist. Many of them are trained in this particular technique. But that style of therapy can certainly help you resolve that ambivalence and help you move on to healing.